Hello everybody. I'm just going to go over how I have my Voxel plugin set up. I'm finding that it's commonly asked on how to use the Unreal Engine Voxel plugin. Currently this is my project. I did just have to restart it, so I did lose quite a bit, but I can go over what I have currently. Right now I'm just using a basic generator tool that was built in with the project, but I can show how it works, as well as I can show how my damaging the surface functionality works. So if we were to go back into my, sorry, I'm in the example content right now, blueprint. I'll start from the event graph. I have my begin play node right here. In begin play, at some point I call get voxel world and I set a voxel world reference. This is just a variable of type voxel world. The get voxel world is actually located within your example files. So if you were to go into here and go all the way down to your voxel files and your voxel content and go to your examples, and you can find the maps here, in which these will teach you how to do a lot of stuff regarding this. But we're looking for the voxel complex controller. And actually I think I need to go back. So complex controller is right here under examples. And there's the voxel complex controller underscore UI. In here we have the get voxel world macro. And so I took that and I threw it onto my main character. So I have this get voxel world macro, and all it does really is it scans over all of the voxel worlds that exist, grabs the first one, and it returns it, so you can call that and set it here. I only call it once because this is a pretty expensive way to get the voxel world. Another way you can do it is through line tracing. But right here, I do the get voxel world, and I set the voxel world reference because I don't plan on ever having more than one voxel world. So, to control my combat, I have a whole bunch of other stuff set up where you go through and do my combat stuff. But basically, on right click, which however you do that inside of your project, whether it's right mouse button or whether you have a action, I'm calling my function damage world. Inside of damage world, I'm calling a line trace by channel to find the location of where we're hitting, the impact point. I'm calling a single line trace by channel. If I was to find the voxel world via line trace, I'd probably do a multi-line trace by channel. That way, if I hit something else in the way, it doesn't obstruct the line trace. I'm getting my actor location and adding the vector forward for the endpoint from the camera distance. This is just a sound. It has nothing to do with anything. You can ignore this completely. Right here, we get into the voxel assets, and we have this find projection voxels, and we throw our voxel world reference in there. We throw a voxel line trace parameter in there. We don't actually need this. However, if you do put this in there, it does affect this. So if you were to delete this, it would still function. But if you add this and you were to put ignore world static, it would ignore world static on this projection. And then just like a line trace, you will throw this in there. The location of the hit, the direction of the hit, so the forward vector of whatever's going, and the radius of it, and the shape and how many rays will exist, as well as the maximum distance for this line trace. I'll go ahead and turn on the debug to show you what it looks like really quick. And from here you can see we have 10 separate line traces, actually 15 it looks like. I don't know, a lot. We have a lot of line traces going out. And so you can see them in there leaving indents. The more you have, the less bumpy it is, because you can see each one of these is changing its own little hole in there if you look closely. So let's say I was to throw this up to 50. And it doesn't actually affect performance that much from what I've noticed, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And you can see I have a much smoother surface. Now, I am calling find projection voxels, and from there I'm doing a for each loop on each of those voxels. On each of those voxels, I'm calling projection hit, and getting the plane position and the voxel position. I'm getting the plane position for the flatten function, and the voxel position for the density. So the density is what we care about here. If I set it to 1, it's going to get rid of voxels. If I set it to 0, it's going to add voxels. Let me go ahead and set this to 0. You can see it is now adding voxels. Now I have a smooth surface, so it's not as prominent, it's harder to tell. So once we're done going through and setting the density of each of those voxels, we're now completed, and we're setting the material sphere. So how do we use this material sphere? We call it, we plug in the voxel world, we set the location of it. I generally double the radius of whatever I'm hitting. So you'll see right here I have a 150 radius, and here I have a 300 radius for the material sphere. And we plug in a material. In my case, I'm using multi-index nodes. While the multi-index doesn't blend as well in all occasions, I tend to find it more modular for being able to check what kind of material you're interacting with. All I did was I right-clicked this, I promoted it to material, and I have a material here. And I changed this to multi-index. It starts out at 5-way blend. You need to change that to multi-index. Setting it to 2 is what ended up getting us to get the mud landscape. And so from there, we go ahead and call smooth sphere, and this is to prevent bumps from being all over the place and getting you to have a more even layout on top of that flatten. I also have my flat set to intersection. The difference is union will add, intersection will remove, and override will do both. Now, if you were to need to do some sort of conditional hits, like to check if you're hitting a rock type material or something or other, you can then do a get material on the voxel position, and you can do a get multi-index. Now, what I recommend with this get multi-index is you can sort by strength. By checking that, it ensures that the strength 0 is always going to be the material that you're hitting with the highest strength. So, for example, if you had rock overlapping with mud, if the rock was more prominent, strength 0 would be the rock material. And you could do an enumerator here to check the multi-index that exists there, and you can do a greater than to check how strong it really is. So if the strength of the rock is more than 0.7, versus the mud is 0.3 or whatever, then you can do a conditional check there to perform a separate type of action. The other thing that we are going to go over really quick is the basic point of being able to change the way the world is generated. So if you have the paid version, you can swap to this object node opposed to using the classes. And you can select these various example types that they have right here for various types of generations. If I was to change this to fast creators, you'd see a very different type of environment generating. It can take a minute. Sometimes you're in it. I'm probably in it from the looks of it. If I was to change this to, let's do erosion, you can see there's different generators going on. But let's go back to the multi-index. And when you set it to multi-index, make sure that when you go down to the voxel materials, it is also set to multi-index. This is where the material collection exists. And if you go into here, you'll see there's various different layers indicating all of the materials that exist inside of this collection. You can add additional layers to this as well as remove layers, but these do need to be a child of the voxel type material, and you can find that inside of the example files in order to create a child of ms voxel quixel in order to create your own material type and set these textures as needed. In terms of generation, If we were to open up this VG example multi-index, you'll see that it does a few things here. So it's setting the layers for the multi-index, and it's setting them based on the height. This height is actually generated. So let's go back to step 1. We have a make seed. You can change this to whatever you want. Based on what you change the seed to, it'll change the way your environment generates. And using that seed, we're creating a 2D Perlin noise fractal. X and Y and Z you can create by holding the X key and clicking, holding the Z key, clicking, and Y key and clicking. These are non-changing variables, just referring to the X-axis, the Y-axis, and the Z-axis. So throwing in a 2D Perlin noise fractal, throwing in the X-axis and Y-axis will create a random noise fractal with a frequency of 0.002. We can actually, I believe we can preview it, maybe not. But you can see that without the noise, it doesn't do anything. It's just a flat ground. But we do have this 2D noise SDF, which we're throwing the Z-axis into. So we're applying that Z-axis to this noise fractal. So basically, the darker the noise fractal is, the higher the Z-axis. And we can actually look right here. I guess this is a bad example. However, the darker the color, the higher the Z-axis, the lighter the color, the lower the Z-axis. And then we are setting the value. This is what actually generates the height map, and we plug it in. So from there, we are just going to go ahead and add our multi-indexes, and we're splitting the materials based on the height. So we're getting that same exact, well, I guess it's not the same exact, but we're getting another Perlin noise fractal with a higher frequency, or lower frequency, I guess. And we are multiplying it by some random number, 25, and we're adding it with the Z-axis to, because the Z-axis is going to be the same as this Z-axis, to apply different layers. And you can change the amount of splits right here. It's set to 3, so you can create more additional layers and apply more multi-indexes. If you were to create additional biomes, something you could do actually is just make more noise fractals and layer them. I'm still looking into different ways to do biomes. However, that is one quick way to kind of mix them up and get some snow areas and desert areas in there, or something along the lines of that. But this is what covers what this is what I'm going to cover for this kind of tutorial, I guess, overview of this Unreal Engine Voxel plugin. And feel free to hop in my Discord or leave a comment below, and I will try and answer any questions that I can. Thank you.